All right, welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily. Nathan Zegura joined by the great Gibby today. Beau Bishop on vacation, and we are certainly very happy to be with you from Berea. A little bit of bustling activity in Berea as this team now sits 2 weeks away from the start of free agency, and we're seeing things come in, Gibby, from around the league that there are going to be a lot of names available. Diana Rossini earlier today tweeting out, talking to an NFL personnel executive, saying that it is going to be a massacre for veterans in the next 2 weeks, which means lots of guys potentially hitting the market. I think the Browns are pretty clear on who's going to be a free agent on their team now. I wouldn't expect many surprises. Could they try to restructure some things? Sure. But for the most part, I think the Browns are going to be, more in the buying than the selling mode, and will have, I think, an opportunity to do some shopping here and to improve this roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And the reason that I mentioned that is, we heard yesterday Coach Stefanski had his press conference at 3:30. He is thrilled that they are bringing back, obviously, the entire coaching staff, and we're going to give you a couple of cut-ups in a second, but really, we know as last season the focus was on the offense and putting the pieces in place around Baker Mayfield. This year, that focus is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So we will talk about that, and we'll take a look at the linebackers today. That position group, we're going to have an exclusive one-on-one with linebacker coach Jason Tarver as well. That'll come your way at 2:30. Sir Andrew joining at 2 for that linebacker position preview. And then we're also going to be joined at 1:30 by Cynthia Freeland, who takes a nice analytical approach at things, and she's going to join us to talk about her mock draft that was focused on helping a team win as many games as possible in 2021. And she'll also talk a little bit about the wide receiver situation, which is the one side of on the offensive side of the ball, the one position group that, there are some questions, that there could be some changes in. You're pretty much set everywhere else there. But Gibby, yesterday, I'll start with you before we get into some of these cuts about Coach Stefanski. I'll say this. It was as Kevin Stefanski a press conference as there's ever been. You didn't get anything. He's not going to give you anything. You're not going to get any secrets out of Coach Stefanski. He was calm. He was measured. He was focused on the work, focused on the need for improvement, focused on getting this team better, focused on getting himself better as a coach. Again, this is the reigning coach of the year in the National Football League, folks. But Gibby, what stood out to you from Coach Stefanski yesterday?
30 questions. Unflappable.
Oh, yeah.
30.
Yeah.
30 questions. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. I mean, but that's what you get when we usually go to Indy. I mean, our interview with them, which, by the way, I think is going to happen sometime next week or the week of free agency.
Oh.
So.
Is that so?
Working through that. Yeah, let them get through the car wash week, and then we get our hands on them.
All right, good.
We'll talk quarter zips and everything else.
I was going to say, that could be a week for a nice quarter zip.
I know.
Making its appearance, which would be tremendous.
Yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. My biggest takeaway was if the pandemic loosens up and, we're able to do a little bit more, we're probably going to go practice with the team somewhere. Going to be a week of joint practices. I love me some joint practices.
Joint practices are great, and they can be, I think they can be very valuable. They can be very eye-opening, as was the case in 2015 when we went to Buffalo. I think they can be incredibly important, and a guy like Kevin Stefanski is going to make sure that we would get the most out of it. But we still don't even know what's happening with the draft, which is scheduled to take place in Cleveland, let alone an off-season program, let alone even a training camp. Now, there seems to be good news on the vaccination front, right? We're hearing good things that potentially every adult could be vaccinated by the end of May, which would, I think, perhaps change the discussion, right, on training camp, change the discussion on attendance. Get First Energy Stadiums. I look at this mural right here that's right across from our studio of a completely packed First Energy Stadium to get back to that again, to get back there to that moment and to get back to that capacity with all of you, which would be tremendous. But, yeah, you're right. Coach Stefanski, you're not going to rattle him. He is got no fluster, as Money Mitch would say, and that was on full display yesterday. But what you love, again, he's always focused. He's not interested in talking about accolades. He's not interested in the fact that he's the reigning NFL Coach of the Year. He's interested in getting better, and here is his opening statement to that effect.
As coaches right now, We're in the middle of our scheme evaluation, like we talked about before. We're got a couple weeks left of that. We're also putting our scout hats on for half the day and watching some free agency guys a couple weeks ago, watching some draft eligible guys this week and into the future, and been on some Zoom calls and some FaceTime calls with some draft eligible prospects. So that is taking up the majority of our day. You know, as we sit here in March, my focus, our focus as a staff, as a team, is we have to get better. We have to improve. And we have to, as coaches, really pull this thing apart and find ways to improve, schematic,
30.
evolve. And I think that's been a big part of our process to date. I think also as coaches, we have to get better. I have to be a better coach next year for this team. And that's my goal. And we're working really hard to find different ways for each of us to get better. So that's really the charge of what we've been
Stand by 10.
few weeks. And as we move forward into this offseason, we'll see how it all shakes out and see what it looks like. But in the meantime, the focus is definitely we have to get better.
And you love that. We just had one of the best seasons in our certainly recent franchise history. 12 wins, your first playoff win since 1994, your first road playoff win in 60 years. And all he wants to do is open this press conference and say, we've got to get better. I've got to get better. And that's why I think we all love Kevin Stefanski. And I think that's why we all feel very confident in Kevin Stefanski, that he's going to have a plan in place to get this team better, to get this organization better, to get himself better. And they've been diving in this. We've had the opportunity, Gibbe, to talk with many, many, many of the position coaches, and we'll bring one of those to you today with our exclusive one-on-one with linebacker coach Jason Tarver. They love this. Bill Callahan's like, this is what I love. We're going with a fine-tooth comb, figuring out ways to get better, make little adjustments here and there to get the most out of our scheme, the most out of our personnel, and that's exciting. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think that they're coming across a lot of different things that even in wins, they go, we could have done this better. We could have done that better. But we were dealing with COVID. We dealt with only one practice for a week. We went through a walkthrough, and that's all we had for the week to get ready. Like, how do we modify things? How do we do things? I think I mean, we've walked by rooms. When you come in, you know, the interviews are underway.
Yep.
with players, potential draft picks and whatnot. I mean, these guys are – this is – for them, this might be as much fun, if not more fun. You know, I don't want to say it's not more fun than the regular season or a game, but it's a close second. Breaking this down and figuring out next steps. And, I mean, that's the coaching staff being back together, and we'll get to that here in just a minute, I think is absolutely huge. And just it's moving forward. And this team had so much success with what they did last offseason with the pandemic shutting everything down that it's one of those situations where it's business as usual, whether we go forward in option A and we're virtual, or option B and we get everybody back in the building. Like, everybody's in sync and in step.
Yeah, and they'll have a plan, as we said, for everything. It's a 3Ps, right? They're prepared. They've got a plan and a process to implement the plan. And, you know, bringing back your entire coaching staff, it is rare. It's wonderful. The Browns had some guys who got, interviews, and if this organization and this team continues to have success, there are guys that are going to go from here on to bigger roles elsewhere. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. But to be able to bring these guys back with all the collaboration we've heard about, how well they work together, that's great. You're not having somebody who isn't familiar with the way you want techniques coach. You're not having somebody come in who isn't familiar already with a good chunk of the players. Now, on defense, there's going to be turnover in every room. But on offense, you know, you've got that continuity, and that's something that we've been looking for so long here, continuity. Even go back to 2014, the last time that you felt things were really looking up, right? We go 7-9 that year. At one point, we're 7-4. Brian Hoyer's playing well beginning of the year. They go to Johnny. But that offseason, Kyle Shanahan leaves of his own volition, but he left. And so you didn't even get to run back that same offense the following year. You didn't even have 2 straight years with that kind of, consistency and continuity. And we really haven't had that on both sides of the ball where you're going to run the same coaching staff 2 years in a row. I can't think of when we had that, because 16. So you 14 to 15, 13. I'll have to go through my tenure here. 13 year was Chud. You had Norv Turner was your offensive coordinator. Defensive coordinator was Ray Horton.
Yes.
In 13.
Part one.
14, you had Pet and Kyle. 15, you had Pet and John DeFilippo. 16, Hugh came in. You had Hugh and Ray Horton part 2. 17, you had Hugh and Greg Williams.
Yes.
Greg Williams' first year. 18 was Todd Haley comes in, and you have Hugh, Todd Haley, Freddie Kitchens, and Greg Williams. 19 is Freddie Kitchens. And who do we have? And we had Steve Wilkes.
Yes.
And 20, man, that's a lot of people. And 20, Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods. But we're going to run back Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods. Forget all the position coaches are coming back. This is the first time that I've been here that we're run back the same offensive and defensive coordinators 2 consecutive years.
It's huge.
It is huge.
The system is in place. All 3 coordinators are back. It's time to just sit down and figure out and tweak. I mean, and he alluded to that yesterday. He said, we have the framework in place. Now it's continuing to get ahead of the curve. There's lots of tape on us. People can watch us. People can break us down. They know the tendencies. It's up to us to tweak it and start throwing new wrinkles into this whole thing. And that was one thing he said yesterday. You know, I mean, you get a lot of coaches sometimes that love to tell you how it was their idea. Oh, this was my idea. This was this. Oh, I took the first thing Kevin Stefanski said yesterday, I'm open to taking anything from anyone. We're into stealing ideas, whether it's at the pro ranks or even in the college ranks. If it's something that can benefit us, we're stealing it.
He told us last year that one of the things he does every week is watches all the explosive plays from around the league. Every single explosive play from around the league. And then if there's something that they like, they'll try to bring it in here. You know, you look about our trick plays. Some of those were AVP's trick plays. Some of those were Chad O'Shea's trick plays. I mean, carbon copies of things that Chad O'Shea had run before. We had a little, you know, we've had a lot of different things that are lifted from other places. And that's what you heard with Bill Callahan in the interview we had last week. If you got a chance, if you missed that, go seek it out. He talks about in the offensive meeting room how these guys are coming in here talking ball, throwing ideas, and you've got Bill Callahan's called plays in the NFL, been head coach. You got Chad O'Shea's called plays in the NFL for the Dolphins. Alex Van Pelt's called plays in the NFL in Cincinnati. You've got obviously Kevin Stefanski who's called plays here and in Minnesota. You got 4 guys on this staff. And not to mention Stump Mitchell, who played the game at a high level and is an excellent running back coach, and Drew, who's been around the game for a long time. You have all those guys working together and in a collaborative way, and I think that is what allows us to not be pigeonholed. We're not just running the Shanahan-Kubiak scheme. We're not just a 2 tight end team. We played 3 receivers more than we played 2 tight ends, even though people would probably not think that that was the case. You've got guys working together, bringing pieces, and that's why we can constantly be evolving. And it's going to be hard for teams to plan for us because of that fact. We have a lot of facts. We don't just run zone schemes in the ground game. Then we talked about that with Coach Callahan. I love that. I love that about him. And have that continuity is something I know that he is very excited about. I think he also knows that it is fleeting. If this team continues to have success, you're not going to have that long term. But boy, having that continuity right now is very exciting. And he talked about being able to bring back his entire coaching staff.
We hired a coach via Zoom and this off season, so that's a first for me. But that's another segue into what I think is a really big deal in bringing our coaching staff back. We did hire John DeCoster as an offensive quality control coach, but the fact that we're bringing all of our coaches back, I think, is a very, very big deal, and I'm very proud of that fact.
You know,
it's the most emotion we saw yesterday in the press.
Yeah, he was very proud of that fact.
I think it was.
It does not surprise me, and I can tell you this: Kevin Stefanski wants these guys, and he said as much in the press conference. He wants these guys to all end up doing what he did. He wants Callie Brownson, who's going to get the opportunity now to work with Stump Mitchell and the running backs this year, to end up being a head coach in the NFL someday. So while he realizes how special it is to be able to have all these guys back, and I know that he's proud of that fact, He's also, I guarantee when he sits up there, when somebody off of his staff goes and becomes a coordinator somewhere and somebody else goes and becomes a head coach somewhere, he's going to be proud of that fact too. And that's just the kind of guy he is. We know here in this building, he wants to have the kind of success that allows people to grow in their careers, to be exposed to as many things as possible so that when they get the chance that he got, after 14 years with the Minnesota Vikings, the chance that he got to come to the Cleveland Browns and to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, that it has the results he got. Coach of the year, first year.
I think we can all agree, if things continue to trend the way they're trending, this will be the last year this entire coaching staff is all together.
Yes. Yes.
Someone will get an opportunity, whether it's on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's on the defensive side of the ball. Opportunities are going to start flowing if this continues to trend the way that we all hope that and expect that it's going to trend. So I think these guys are enjoying the fact that they're all together and they're all able to see each other every day. I mean, lockstep. Everybody knows. And they weren't even together. You're going to hear Jason Tarver talk about his car ride to Pittsburgh by himself. He
drove by him on the way home.
Yeah.
They're in their TL limousines rolling around.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't even they weren't even in the presence of one another outside of game day.
No, and they were able to thrive in that environment, which gets you excited about what can we do when we can all get on the grass. And I really think that we are heading to a place as a country with relation to COVID and the vaccine that you're going to be able to have. I think training camp is probably looking like a pretty real possibility as getting back to normal, getting fans in the stands, getting an off-season program together as guys get themselves in a position where, this becomes less of a deal going forward. One last thing before we take a quick little break, and of course these are our Ohio Business Machine Hot Topics, OBM. Ohio Business Machines is the preferred copier provider of the Cleveland Browns. Who have all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. The last is just a quick little soundbite on Grant Delpit. I know a lot of us are interested in Delpit's return. Stefanski had a little bit of optimism about the young man from LSU.
I think they're all progressing. I wouldn't lump them all together, Nate, because they're all different injuries, but I know they're all progressing. And I would, I could specifically speak to Grant. I saw him in there today. Looks great. He's coming along. I did see Greedy.
10 seconds, stand by.
We'll have more updates as we go. And then, like we talked about with Odell, I know he's doing great, but I don't have a specific timeline or anything.
Yeah, and you like those updates, especially on Grant Delpit, a guy that I know Joe Woods was counting on to play a big role in his defense. The Browns felt that they stole him in the second round, and, he's going to be counted on big time in 2021. And the injury was suffered so early. He's had a full year by the time we get back to training camp to get ready, going, and I've seen him walking through the building as well. He looks to be in tremendous condition. He does. He looks great. He looks like he is going to be ready to go, and the Browns certainly hope that is the case. When we come back, we'll go around the league. We talked earlier about how some of the head, we talked about the veterans, maybe some cuts coming. Well, 3 of them yesterday, some big names. We'll talk about those and more when Cleveland Browns Daily returns. Welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. If your Social Security benefits have been denied, call the disability lawyers at 1-800-ELK Ohio. Elk & Elk, proud partner of the Cleveland Browns. So we go around the league now. Remember, Cynthia Freeland joining us at the bottom of the hour. Take a look at her analytics-driven mock draft, as well as a little examination of the Browns wide receiver situation ahead of free agency and the draft. That's at the bottom of this hour. But now we go around the league. We talked about veterans being released, and some of them were. We got some vets that were released yesterday, Gibbe. And it starts with a name very familiar to our coaching staff, Kyle Rudolph, who was cut by the Vikings yesterday. And people are wondering, would the Browns have any interest in Kyle Rudolph? Maybe. I would say, look, he's going to be 32 this season. Last 2 years, 39 catches, 367 yards, 6 touchdowns with Stefanski. 2020, 28 catches, 334 yards, 1 touchdown. Certainly well off of his career high of 840 yards and 7 scores in 2016. We've got our tight end room is good. I would say if you didn't have an Austin Hooper, maybe you're looking at Rudolph as a 1 year to continue to get Harrison Bryant ready, because he is much more of an Austin Hooper in terms of his skill set. Now, Hooper's younger and significantly better at this point of his career. But, the guy that has the unique skill set in your room is the Chief, David Njoku. And he was addressed yesterday in the press conference, and coach is looking forward to using him. And I think when you're doing some of that self-scouting, I think identifying ways to use the Chief even more because of his size-speed combo, which makes him very unique in your defensive room. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that's a direction that the Browns look to increase the involvement of David Njoku. And you've already also have Harrison Bryant. You've got the 2-time Pro Bowler in Austin Hooper. We don't need another, at this point, what I would call a slow tight end. Not that we have any, but that's not what you're looking for in your skill set to add to that room. You're looking to add speed. Kyle Rudolph doesn't have that. Now, like I said, if you didn't have the veteran leadership and that reliable guy like you've got in Austin Hooper, who is younger, more explosive, better than Kyle Rudolph, yeah, you would consider it. But right now, I don't see any fit whatsoever with Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean, maybe from a leadership standpoint and knowing the system, but you mentioned David Njoku, and that was one of the first things that Kevin Stefanski got asked about yesterday in his press conference. And I think people forget before everything happened with him and Drew Rosenhaus in the summer, like the Browns had already picked up his option for 2021. That's how much they believe in David Njoku. Like, he's been under contract, and they wanted him to be under contract. They wanted him to be here. They clearly see something in him. And that's – I know that the rumors continue to be rampant, and I know maybe he has said some things or been maybe a little cryptic, for lack of a better term, on some of his comments with regards to the team and the offseason and this coming season. But there is a place for him on this football team.
Yeah.
And I think the other factor is I think you really want to see Harrison Bryant take that next step. So bringing in a veteran that's going to take snaps away, you got to know what you got here. And he showed flashes, but if he could put together a full season, I think you'd rather have that than spend the money. Because while you have money, you don't have a crazy amount of money in free agency to spend, but you don't want to spend it on a position that I think you already have a lot of wealth.
You do, and you want to expand the role, I think, of David Njoku. He has a size-speed combo that is unique in that room. You saw he was the leading tight end receiver against the Chiefs. He had that huge third-down catch against the Steelers in Week 17 on the drive that finished with Jarvis Landry taking that inside handoff on the kind of jet motion and getting into the end zone. David Njoku was excellent down the stretch, and I think that, yes, you do want to get him involved more and more. I think that David Njoku is that's somebody when you're self-scouting and you say, oh, he put in the work as a blocker. There's no doubt about that. I think that's somebody you want to incorporate more because of the mismatches that he can create and the fact that he is a different kind of athlete than you have in that position group. You're not adding another Kyle Rudolph to that group, in my opinion. I don't think that's happening. A couple of the others who are released, Henry Anderson cut by the Jets. I don't think there's would be much interest there. He would be a kind of a rotational guy at this point. Career high, 7 sacks 3 years ago. Since then, really has kind of fallen off. Former third-round pick. And then there's Kyle Van Noy. Now, Kyle Van Noy is interesting because very productive player. More of a 3-4 outside linebacker, though. So where does he fit into our defense? I don't know. He's not the end opposite Myles Garrett. You know, he's had 5 or more sacks in 3 of the last 4 seasons, 5 forced fumbles over the last 2 seasons. So, you know, he signed a big free agent deal with the Dolphins, and after 1 year, they're like, okay, we're good. Not say, well, look, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 6 pass defense. Was solid for them, but not obviously what they wanted to pay him. And, you know, Van Noy is a guy who's going to be hitting 30. He'll be 30 at the end of this month, March 26th, he'll turn 30.
Maybe he's a guy that gets a 1-year prove-it deal, though.
He does, but I think he's just a better schematically. I don't think he's necessarily the fit for the Browns that the Browns would be looking for. I don't think he's the fit. Who would be a fit for the Browns in the draft? And we'll talk receivers as well. Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network analyst specializing in NFL data science and analytics, will be calling us on the Fifth Third Money Line next. Welcome back to Cleveland Browns Daily. Time now to go to the fifth third money line as we welcome in Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network analyst specializing in NFL data science and analytics. And you can follow her on Twitter at CFreeland, CFRELUND. Cynthia, thank you so much for being with us today. It sounds like we do not have her at this moment, so we'll hopefully
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. What's up, Cynthia?
Oh, there we go. I said, thank you so much for having me. I always love coming on to talk Browns.
Let's go. And it's what better time has there been in the last 25 years to talk Browns than right now? Actually, there hasn't been a better time. So it is great to be here with a little bit of excitement. And, you know, it's fun to have to go through. And I know you just did your analytics-driven mock draft. And also, I'll let you elaborate on it. But your goal here was to identify players that would maximize the team's wins in 2021, period, right, with this mock draft you did at NFL.com.
Period, full stop. And also, I wasn't allowed to make trades because we have to draw the line somewhere because I would literally trade out every position if I could. and you also had to factor in the free agents, the marketplace. So I couldn't double dip and take one free agent one place and one place. You know, there was no double dipping. It was if it was, you know, an actual situation where someone, once they got picked, you couldn't say, oh, there's 4 quarterbacks that could go to the Patriots. Nope, it's whichever one, given the whole marketplace and also the draft class. And so it's kind of factoring which one everyone should take in the first round.
I like that. And you know what I like even more is that in the past, when I went to a mock draft like this, I wouldn't have to scroll very far, if at all, to see where the Browns were picking. And now I got to go all the way down to number 26, which is a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, and remember, you get one of the league's best wide receivers back. That's a question mark for many teams this season, is what to do at wideout. So the Browns are in really good shape between not needing O-linemen and not needing wide receivers. Like, life is pretty good.
It is good, and we go to your pick for the Browns at 26, Trevon Moehrig out of TCU, who led all college safeties and pass breakups each of the past 2 seasons. You loved his 2019 data. He can defend the slot, and so when you make a selection like this, are you looking at the Browns running a lot of, in this case, it would be 3 very good young safeties in Ronnie Harrison, you know, the returning Grant Delpit, who was their second-round pick a year ago, and then Moehrig coming in as kind of that hybrid nickel and third safety?
Yeah, he's listed as a safety, but if you look to see the way great safeties have been playing recently, like look at Justin Simmons over there in Denver, or Buda Baker out in Arizona. When you look to see, like, the word safety can mean other things now, right? So ultimately, it's the fact that he has such experience playing in the slot. He can be slid around in a lot of different ways. So being able to be used very versatilely, that is his advantage. It says safety, but kind of put a little asterisk there and say he can do other things as well.
And listen, Joe Woods loves that versatility because Delpit can come cover the slot as well, and that's a place, that is an area, if you're looking at him as a slot corner, that, you know, that would be a position of need. And so one of the things that I noticed here as you went through your kind of explanation, and it's a good explanation because I think it really makes sense of everything that's going on. When you look at the Browns, what did you identify as some of the biggest needs in terms of position or skill sets through your models?
The interesting part here is that the kind of anything defensive back sort of flags, not specifically. Remember, you need to have sort of this nice little, think of it as a triangle, right? You need to have good pressure up front. You need to have the back end be defended to support that. You got the pressure up front. You got that taken care of. There's been inconsistencies in the back end as far as how to defend the pass. The better you get on offense, the more you're going to need to be able to defend the pass specifically. And those two things, kind of think about it, right? If you're playing with a lead, teams are going to throw the ball more often. Stopping the pass really makes teams more one-dimensional, makes it more interesting to defend, especially given who your opponents are next season. So all the opponents are known, just not the order that they're going to be played in.
Correct.
And by the way, you've got 3 teams that are going to want to pass the ball quite a bit. Maybe not the Ravens. Maybe they'll look to upgrade their passing capabilities, but you know, the Bengals are going to be having to pass quite a bit. You're going to see that from the Steelers as well. I don't know who's going to be necessarily catching those balls yet, right? Because Juju Smith-Schuster likely won't be returning. But how do we look to see, okay, what is going to get the Browns into the playoffs, It is specifically tailoring who their opponents are next season, thinking about how this is such a pass-happy league, and the more you can reinforce that. So anyone to help stop the pass is basically what my model flags for.
So that becomes interesting, and there's a lot of discussion here, as you know, that people, with Paul DePodesta here and Andrew Barry, that people say the Browns are very analytically driven, and there's a big question, right? Where do off-ball linebackers fit in to that type of an analytical approach, knowing that the goal is to stop the pass? And I'm curious to get your take on that, because I was looking, one of the guys that we think is certainly an interesting prospect goes pick 25 right before the Browns, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's a linebacker, kind of hybrid linebacker safety guy out of Notre Dame. But just how does that factor into the model?
I like him a lot. When you look to see Owusu-Koramoah's data, the interesting part about him was how fast he can blitz, which is interesting for a lot of reasons. His versatility as well is really important. I think you're right, an off-ball linebacker would have been nice. Again, in my mock, he wasn't available. So I think either one of those two would be good additions to the Browns. It's really about what do you want to do on, let's make it real for a second. And given the free agent landscape, next week's going to be interesting because with the different cap challenges this year, sure, other teams that aren't in as fortunate of a position as the Browns are going to have to make a lot of cuts that they wouldn't have been anticipating making. So the Browns are going to be able to use some really smart tactics in order to figure out who to kind of swoop up in that situation. So really part of the fact here is that there are some other situations, other people they could potentially explore that could really, add to that defensive capability. You have to stop the run in your division as well, of course. The Ravens, yes, that's a thing. So ultimately, what I'm looking at in this one is, who's versatile and who can be taught and who has the upside potential in the draft that's going to be able to complement whatever free agents are available. Browns are really lucky this season. I mean, all of the smart tactics taken in the few years, for the past 3 years, nobody could have anticipated the pandemic. Right. But in the situation they're in right now, it's really fortunate that anywhere they're looking, it's kind of adding to something that's at least average, if not above average already, as opposed to something where they're really deficient and having to figure out a full strategy to fulfill a deficiency.
Talking with Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network analyst specializing in NFL data science. We're going through her mock right now, and as you talked about, you just laid out all the reasons why that would be a good pick for the Browns there at 26, going with kind of that hybrid back-end defender and Trevon Moehrig out of TCU. And I'm curious, when you think about this, you keep mentioning free agency. Do you already have a projection for what happens in free agency as well, or was that just kind of something in the back of your mind you were thinking about?
Ooh, I had to work on free agency first. So, putting together all these things, I try to look, I'm not saddled with calling, it's very hard for some of these draft analysts. They have to call all these GMs and bother coaches and say, who do you like? Who do you not like? Usually we get the combine to just bother everyone at once. But this year, there's no way to do that. So trying to figure this out for me has been more siloed, but has been more pure because I haven't had anyone, no opinions have been given to me at all. I've tried to stay really away from all of that and just do it purely on production. So I did a lot with free agents. Trying to anticipate the cap casualties so that my producers on TV have a little bit of a heads up of which highlights to cut or, who to really focus on so we can get the graphics and stats ready. So I've been kind of focusing on both. I think there's going to be some interesting ones, but I think it's a really good time to realign everyone's cap expectations. The smart teams will do a lot of renegotiating of their key players. I would anticipate someone like Aaron Rodgers restructuring their deal to create some more space for the Packers. So people who have, not so favorable positions, it's kind of like your mortgage. If you thought all home prices were going to go up, you don't really care if it adjusts, right? But now that the home prices are not going up like you thought they would, you got to go kind of reconfigure your mortgage.
So do you think, for example, and I want to get into the Browns specifically, what you ended up thinking might happen for the Browns in free agency, but do you think, guys, it is rare in today's NFL, right? Let's take anybody who's signs a 4-year contract that's got guaranteed money through the first 2 years. it's not all that often that people play those third and fourth seasons. Now, that it does happen, and would you say that those people, especially in this year, and for the Browns, you have a couple. Sheldon Richardson comes to mind. Jarvis comes to mind. Joel Bitonio comes to mind. Guys who are through the guaranteed money of their deals, that it would make sense to restructure, add some years on, give them some guaranteed money up front, and then try to create some flexibility, knowing that, hey, if we can lower you in 2021, we can bump you back up in 2022 when the cap comes back.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, look, like the accounting principles that go into like when you can bump or not, a lot of that comes down to like how creative and how much leverage someone has, right? Like certain teams people just are want to play for, and they'll renegotiate. Like think about it like this. For the most part, teams with good quarterbacks, the offensive skill players will be like, yeah, I'll stay here because it stinks to go not win somewhere. People know that. So, it's a lot about, like everything else, it's a lot about leverage. And if I'm looking to see, like if I'm any one of these players, like you don't often get like a Carson Wentz situation where he got traded for not very much. Like the Colts made out like bandits on that, right? So it's really trying to find those situations where you can get the right blend of who's amenable to, changing their contract in an effort to try to win and not overpaying. So it's hard because, look, I think J.J. Watt in Arizona, there was demand for him because he's a known entity in a year with so much uncertainty. But the Cardinals certainly overpaid for that, even though, they could, push it out in several years and amortize it over a longer period of time. But it's an overpay, even though he will be a good addition to their team.
It's going to be interesting to see how that all kind of shakes itself out. What would you see the Browns doing, since you said you went through the free agency? Let's get into your crystal ball here. What do you see happening with the Browns?
Well, the Browns have so many good players under contract. So, I think this is all this is really like the opportunity to blend kind of some veteran presence, because you do need that, along with some young guys and along with some kind of not so veterans, right? Like a couple of years in the NFL makes you a veteran. So ultimately, it's really, to me, I'm looking at defense. Like if I'm anyone on the Browns, I'm sitting there trying to figure out my strategy for, what am I going to do on the D line? That this is a very, in my estimation, this draft class, interior defenders, there's like one that's good, that's probably going to be doing pretty well, but a few could be, I don't know. It's very hard to tell if they're going to be any good. So it's really like trying to figure out, like, all right, where are you going to fortify? Like, what along the defense? Like, what are you doing at linebacker? How do you take? I would do a defensive kind of. They did such a good job with the O-line last year that you're in such great shape from the standpoint of like a luxury not to have to focus places where other people do. So to me, it's like, all right, structure this defense for the future. So you're not just good this year, but you're also good for like the next 5 seasons, right? Get that right blend of veterans with the new guys. And then, that guy, that really good guy up front, like make sure you're using that really, really good guy up front, just however you think he can just best go and wreak havoc on every other quarterback.
Absolutely, and you mentioned it. It's got to be the focus on the defense for the Browns. That's where your free agents are. That's where you need to make some adjustments. You mentioned offensively, you're bringing everybody back on your line. You're bringing everybody back at running back. You're bringing all your tight ends back. You're bringing your quarterback back. You're in great shape. Receiver is the one area where you've got some questions. Hollywood Higgins, who was incredibly efficient last year, is a free agent, and you're getting Odell Beckham Jr. back, and you examined every team's wide receiver situation ahead of free agency. What did you think about the Browns group, and if they were to add anything to it, is there a particular trait you think they are looking to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can always add some speed.
Yep.
You can always add some, like, precise route runner would be great especially for what they've been trying to do with, like, Stefanski and the play action passing. So there's some guys who, like, I know nobody likes this, but I don't care about, like, pure speed. I care about game speed. And I care about game speed as it relates to, we're missing the combine. We don't get to see someone run a 4.22 40 and be like, wow, he's fast. And then be like, yeah, but can he do the other things a receiver needs to do? So, there's diminishing returns at certain areas, right? Like I did a whole study of like guys who ran in their 40 and ended up wide receivers who ran their 40 and ended up between 4.4 and 4.54, which is kind of a common grouping for players. And the erosion for their, like when they go to the field and run go routes, just because I had to narrow it down some way, like they end up running about half a second slower. And then guys who ran under 4.4, they run about like 0.57 seconds slower. So for the most part, they're the same. They end up being the same when they put their pads on.
Right.
So it's
functional
speed that matters.
Are you fascinated? Yeah. Are you fascinated that, we're going to get away from, and I know your colleague Daniel Jeremiah was talking about it, getting away from 40s and those kind of things, because we're going to have all this tracking data where we're going to understand, 5 years worth of tracking data, play speed, game speed, what it on the football field.
We already got that.
Right. And
I can already give you that. Yeah, computer vision. The thing I think that the combine will always be useful for is, but it's kind of like when you take the SAT, right? It doesn't measure very much. It just measures how well you take the SAT. To me, the combine, what I've noticed, especially since, I'm so fortunate to be able to stand on the field when these guys are completely done. And it's a long 4 days, right?
Yes.
Like you get poked and prodded and interviewed and questioned, and, you've got to follow this line or whatever. And at the end, sometimes you see them like the last time they're like, normal, right? They're not superstars yet. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they need a hug. Like, I feel very maternal towards them at that. I'm like, you did great, buddy. Like, I feel like I need to be a cheerleader there. But like, ultimately what it's good for is showing some of the things that, like, following rules, and part of what is being a good team and is how people act in these situations where you're exhausted and,
sure.
It's been a very trying week. So I do think there's still value, and I love the combine. I never want it to go away. But the pure metrics that come out of it are, other than the medical and maybe like, measuring everyone with the same stick is good, but like doesn't really matter. Like, doesn't really matter if Trevor Lawrence is 6'5" and 5/8 inches or 6'6". Like it
No.
doesn't, right? So
No.
so it's just funny more than anything else. But I like the process.
It's a great process. I thought you were saying that after 4 days people are exhausted. I thought you were talking about us in the media, because you've got to go get information at Prime 140 and all of those things, that take a little time out of your morning. Certainly the following day, take a little bit out of you. Like, it's Indy becomes a little bit like Vegas for a second there. I thought that's what you're referring to. But of course, so maternal, focusing on the players. It's beautiful.
Food. Horrible food.
It's beautiful. All right, Cynthia, this is the part, though, and we so appreciate that. This is awesome. This is the part that I love. And you even say in here, here's the part that's extra. You've got projection and results for all the teams and draft prospects they've selected over the past 15 years. You looked at each season's on-field results, objectively analyzing what happened, identifying the trends and strategies that led to success or failure. And then here's the part, and you just slide this in. This feels like a very burying the lead to me. I also asked coaches, front office executives, and even players to help me understand why results occurred. These subjective inputs help shape the results, meaning the model gets smarter each season. And by the way, you get smarter each season. I think as somebody who gets to be around coaches and have been around front office people, certainly with the Browns now for 9 seasons, it's those informal talks that you have where you ask questions and they're kind enough to share their knowledge with you that makes you so much smarter and be able to be better at your job. This is huge. I'd put this all in bold and italics. That's the gold. So I'll ask you, what's the best thing that you ever heard from somebody that you said a light bulb went on for you and helped you and the model get smarter each season?
Well, the one that always sticks with me is one coach who is particularly like gregarious, super fun to talk to. I was like, Coach, like, I don't know where the safety was here. By the way, safeties, I spend a lot of time learning what they're supposed to do, because they're, especially as more teams are using slot receivers and doing these short passes and screens, like, what the heck is the safety supposed to be doing? I don't know what's being asked of them. And I'm like, Coach, I don't understand. And I asked like 4 different plays, and the coach heard me goes, sometimes people just bleep up.
Yep.
You're like, got it. So the point is, at the end of the day, like, your best laid plans can go awry. So it's ultimately about the ability to take what you're trying to do and get as close to, that ideal as possible, but have a sense of humor around the fact that there are 11 people on each side going 11 different directions on every single snap. So it's really about keeping everything in perspective, about just giving yourself the best chance for it, and then staying flexible and staying kind of keeping your wits about you and keeping your sense of humor, so that everything that you're doing, just like, you're having fun with it. Because at the end of the day, everyone sometimes just bleep up.
And there it is. But you know who doesn't? You, Cynthia. This was tremendous. We certainly appreciate the time. I think this is a great read. I think it's fascinating. And as I said, I think we need to get this part in bold here, because that could be your own podcast, the stuff that you're learning to make the model get smarter every season, because that's what's interesting. And that, I think, when you talked about the combine being stats not happening, that to me is one of the biggest losses for me personally. You're at the NFL Network. I'm sure you're able to be around these people much more often, but I miss a lot of that informal talk that happens in Indy that where you learn stuff about a game that we all love so much.
Yeah, thanks for having. And you can send my bill for the 10% when I start my podcast. You can send it to me. My address.
Perfect. I'll be agent. I'll be your agent. Represent. Come on, folks. You need to listen to this. Cynthia Freeland, the best. Follow her on Twitter. Check out her good stuff at NFL.com and be on the lookout for her podcast coming your way very, very soon. All right, Cynthia. Take care. Thank you. And when we come back, Andrew Gribble, Sir Andrew joins us at the top of the hour as we get into the linebacker position review. Look at that breakdown. And don't forget, linebacking coach Jason Tarver joining us at 2:30 here on the program. Cleveland Browns Daily, rolling on a Wednesday. First Friday. we have Gribbs. We are back here on Cleveland Browns Daily. And Cynthia Freeland joined us earlier on the Fifth Third Money Line. Just a reminder that all guests who appear on CBD appear via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a fifth third better. And also, obsessing over something like football can be a problem, but if you're obsessing over gambling, that can be downright dangerous. So do something to take your mind off it, like finding a hobby. Want more tips like this? Go to keepitfunohio.com for great ways to keep gambling fun. All right, it is time now to welcome in Sir Andrew Gribble, also on the Fifth Third Money Line. Before we get to Gribbs, who will tell us all about this linebacker room and his thoughts on Kevin Stefanski, I want to remind you that if your game plan this season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna Real Estate Services have you covered. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today. All right, Gribbs, one half of the Ibs boys. Gribbs, did you know there was a big week last week? The Browns Daily official account in the third person using the term the Ibs boys in promotion of the BPA, the first documented third-person Ibs boys in Ibs boys history.
You know, we're looking to just spread the word whatever way we can, and I think you have to try new tactics. And you know, I'm open for all sorts of marketing that gets people subscribing, watching, doing whatever
That's
they
right.
can to
Buzzing.
take in our great analysis.
Thank you,
That's
Gribble.
right.
That's what I was just trying to do. And I think the two insecure people that host the show every day from 1 to 3 just got a little butthurt about
So now you're getting completely erroneous. It was the greatest thing ever. I saw that and I cried tears of joy. I loved it. And what Gribbs said, listen to your partner. Listen to the other half. Listen to the smart half of the Ibs boys here.
He's
he just
clearly
told you.
smarter than me.
He told you we're looking for marketing. So 2 double mentions now in 1 week of the Ibs boys tweet, thus bringing attention to the BPA itself. You just got 2 free marketing moments out of your 1 tweet. So just sit back and relax and let the goodness happen from what you did.
You got live reads in the show. No matter what, you're going to have to promote it.
There you go. There you go. Anyway, Gribbs, pleasure to be with you as always. I thought yesterday was as Kevin Stefanski a press conference as there ever was. It was perfect Stefanski. Here's 30 minutes. Here's 30 questions. You'll get nothing and like it. And I'm going to tell you, I want to be better. We all need to be better. I loved it. It was vintage.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way to describe it. I mean there's not much news to report, and that's usually a good thing. I think that I mean usually this you got to think of it. Think of this as your combine press conference.
Yep.
And think of all the news that those press conferences generate every year, and then think of some of these other press conferences you've seen around the league so far this offseason, whether it's what the Steelers are doing with Big Ben. The Bears talking about everything is on the table at their quarterback position. I mean, you name it. There's none of that here right now. And I think that that's a credit to the kind of season the Browns have had, the stability they have going into next season on a coaching staff standpoint, the lack of drama, and then mostly the lack of kind of taking the bait of any kind of questions that would make some headlines from your head coach. And I think that just set us up and made life a little more difficult for people that like to write a lot of things. But that's where the Browns are at right now, and I think it beats a lot of previous off-season press conferences we've had to cover.
No doubt. I mean, it's a new era when every mock draft you have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll when you get to the Browns pick, and the fact that a combine, quote-unquote, press conference from their head coach is not newsworthy at all.
Yeah, I mean that's just the state of things right now. I think
it's good. It's a good state.
This is how you look at it. The more exciting your regular season is, the less exciting your off season probably is.
Yep.
The less exciting your regular season is, the more exciting your off season can tend to be. And I think that's just the balance you play. Most teams don't have both because usually if you have a good regular season, there's not as much to do personnel-wise or anything in the off season. So I just think that's the state of things. It's a new adjustment, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, quite a rather welcome adjustment to be sure with Kevin Stefanski. And you got to love the fact that NFL Coach of the Year and opens his press conference by saying, "I've got to be a better coach. I've got to get better." I mean,
yeah, and
it's great.
I like the fact that they're talking about evolving both the offense and defense.
Yep.
I think that's something where you have to look at it and see what you did better, because I think there was times where both sides of the ball played at a very high level and won you games. The defense with turnovers and the offense with just some high-scoring outputs, but then you just have to look at the moments where they didn't perform as well. I think you can look at the final game of the season where both sides of the ball probably let you down a little bit. And I think that's the lasting image that you take into the offseason. I think the focus is on avoiding those kind of moments and just being better when it matters most.
Well, we've gone through the offense in our position review and position breakdown series, and really you're running it back. I mean, maybe there's some questions in the wide receiver room in terms of Hollywood being a free agent. You know, Odell's coming back. Maybe you want to add some speed in there. We've heard Brashad Perriman is a name that was bandied about, who was very successful here. There are a lot of guys with speed in this draft class. But defensively, it's a different story. And you're going to have new faces, and I think likely 5 new starters out of your 11 on the defensive side of the ball from a year ago. And that's going to be true at all 3 levels. Up front, you know, Billings is now back from opting out. You're going to get a defensive end opposite Miles with Vernon out, we know, with the Achilles. Linebacker, you bring back some young guys, but the guys that played the most for you, B.J. Goodson, Malcolm Smith, the veterans, they're unrestricted free agents. So when you look at this room, you know, you've got the 3 youngsters, Taki, Mac Wilson, Jacob Phillips, who we know will be back. What do you see? And I think they played better than they were given credit for last year as a group, but how do you see this room kind of shaking out here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the youngest position group on the team, probably in terms of experience and just age, and that's if you're assuming that you're not, if you don't bring back guys like B.J. Goodson and Malcolm Smith, who are really the most experienced guys in that room by far. It's just one where it's one of those where it's hard to peg because you just want to know what kind of assets are you willing to put into that room? I mean, is it going to be one that you really go after some of these top guys in free agency who are going to cost a lot of money, or are you going to continue to build through the draft? And I tend to think it's going to be a combination of both, but maybe not on the when you look at some of these top guys that are going to command a lot of money. You know, I look at it like you can definitely get better through free agency, and that could include bringing back one of your 2 veterans as well, or both veterans. And as Kevin Stefanski said, you know, he'd love everyone back. So I think it's going to be, I think, like last year, a mix of both drafts and being opportunistic in free agency to kind of help this room, like you said, that I thought performed at a higher level than maybe we expected last year. And I think you try to build off that with your young guys being the centerpiece.
Yeah, B.J. Goodson led the linebackers in snaps and led the Browns in tackles with 91. He was the second-best tackling linebacker in the NFL this year per Pro Football Focus. He's an unrestricted free agent. Malcolm Smith, also unrestricted, the 9-year veteran, former Super Bowl MVP, played primarily on passing down, 72 tackles, 1 interception, had the 7th-best coverage linebacker grade in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. And then you mentioned the youngsters. We got Sione Taki, who set career highs in every category as a starter in 2020. He had that pick 6 when he was the team captain against Philly, the interception in the playoff win over the Steelers, and was the number 2 run defending linebacker in the NFL per Pro Football Focus, 13th overall. He's a guy we'll talk about in a second that I think really poised to take a big leap, as is Jacob Phillips, the 3rd-round pick. Bothered by injuries all year, but he started Week 17, 10 tackles as the starting Mike in that Week 17 win over the Steelers that got the Browns into the playoffs. He's clearly the longest, fastest of all the Browns linebackers. He's a guy that needs to take, I think, a big jump here. And then you got Mac Wilson, who's slowed by injuries, but really, I thought, had his best game of the year in the playoffs against Kansas City as he got his process down the way that they wanted it. But those 3, we'll start with Taki. A huge jump from year 1 to year 2. And you hope you can see another one, because if he can get a little bit more comfortable in space and in coverage, he could turn into a real stud for this team.
Yeah, I think you look at him as someone whose arrow was definitely trending in the right direction last year.
Yeah.
I just think he didn't get a ton of experience his first year in the defense, and that largely had to do with the position he was playing and the fact that Joe Schobert never really came off the field. So this was truly his first year of getting on-field experience, and I think as the season progressed, and I think maybe peaking with that pick 6 he had against the Eagles, I mean, you started to notice him more, and you started to see him making more and more plays. So we all know how hard he works. We all know, I think stability, again, will do him good, like all these players, with the same system, same calls. You can focus on areas where you can get better, maybe physically and mentally, without having to digest a brand new system. I like the direction that Taki's heading, and I would, if you're projecting it today, even with the free agent signings, I think he's got a significant role in this room next year.
I think he does too, and the guy that I think they want to be able to take on a significant role next year is Jacob Phillips, who, obviously did a lot of learning this year, battled injuries a couple times, but when you just saw that flash, his sideline to sideline speed, his ability to close on ball carriers was pretty special, stood out. And, he's a guy that I think that he fits the prototype of what they're looking for.
Yeah, I'm excited about Jacob Phillips. And I go back to even that Week 4 game in Dallas where he made like 3 straight plays to end the Cowboys' drive. I mean, he was involved in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, it is the flashes. I think his rookie season was ultimately kind of ruined a bit by the knee injury that kind of cropped up on a couple occasions for him. But if you remember, he entered Week 1 as a starter as well. So, I mean, he's done something that clearly has impressed this coaching staff. And I just think you saw from him, you saw speed that just isn't otherwise there at that position right now. I think the sideline to sideline speed he has is something that really plays well in what the NFL is becoming. And I like the upside that Jacob Phillips bring. I would like to see him with a full off season, fully healthy entering Week 1. Then I'll be even more excited.
Agreed. And then there's Mac, who, played the most of these guys his rookie year. That injury early slowed him down, battled through some things as the season went on. But again, I said best game of the year in that Kansas City game against the playoffs, and I know that the coaches are excited about that and hope that they can get more of that Mac Wilson going forward. Yeah,
and I think, again, a guy whose season was basically, weird off season, then you get injured in training camps. You really, with a new defense, I'm giving him a pass for a lot of that was how he had to kind of adjust, and then not getting the kind of snaps he was accustomed to. That's why I think 2021 is huge for Mac. I think that he clearly has kind of that alpha leader mentality that you like having at the linebacker position. I think for him, it's just about maintaining that consistency, because I think we've seen some moments like we did in the Kansas City game where he looks great out there, then some other games, whether it be in his rookie season, his second season, where he struggled a bit. And I think that that's something where in year 3, it's a big season for everyone in the NFL. And I think it's big for him. And I think he can still rely on that experience he got his first season, knowing he can do this in the NFL. He's clearly shown he can play. It's just about maintaining the consistency and showing your coaches you can stay on the field, be relied upon every single snap out there.
You got a couple key reserves, Tay Davis, Elijah Lee, who were both special teams guys. And Elijah Lee, 6 special teams tackles in 8 games. Davis, a core special teams guy. Davis is restricted. Elijah Lee, unrestricted. You also have Montrell Meander, the converted safety that the Browns have really kept around for a long time. They've invested a lot in him as they hope to develop him into a coverage linebacker, former safety, and special teams player as well. What do you think about that group at the bottom there? And do you expect Davis to be back?
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, it's just a matter of if it makes work with their cap and what he's looking for as well. And I just think you talked to Mike Prefer. I mean, Tay Davis is always one of the first guys mentioned with his core group. So obviously you want to bring back some of those guys that help you out on special teams. And I think both those players were solid. And I think that the Browns want to be a little bit better, I think, in special teams than they were last year. But those are players that could be counted on last year. And linebackers always play such a huge role in special teams.
Yes, they do. All right, let's bring in Gibby. A full Ibs Boys reunion, as he's going to give us some questions on the position. What up, Gibby?
All right, Gribbs, we'll start with you. One word to describe this room in 2020.
I'm going to go with sufficient. And I think that was something where we entered the season not knowing what to expect from that group because it had the most question marks entering the year. And I thought they did what they needed to do. I don't think they were the flashiest group. I don't think they stood out the most of any from the position group in the division or anything like that. But I thought they got the job done and helped your defense be what it was, which was an opportunistic defense that's made plays when it needs to make plays.
Zegura.
It's 2 words, which is, of course, what I'm going to do is take your one word. After you flubbed it, I get to go 2 words. But it really is 1 word. And the 2 words are together, in progress, but with an emphasis on progress. And so I think that it's a room where you're seeing the development of Sione Takitaki. We need to see that jump from both Mac and Jacob Phillips this year. And then it'll be interesting to see what kind of a veteran is either brought back, Goodson Smith, or brought in. I would be more surprised if the Browns invested an early pick anyway, in the linebacking room, more so than I would be, and we'll get to this, I guess, later on. But it's a work in progress, but I do think that the progress is the key word. The jump you got from Taki year 1 to year 2, if you get something similar to that from Phillips, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape because I don't think it's a defense that's going to have 3 linebackers on the field all that often.
All right. Zegura, we'll start with you on this one. What is the biggest strength of this room? The gentlemen that are still here.
Physicality and guys who love playing the game, love hitting people. The linebacker's job, and we're going to hear from Coach Tarver at the bottom of the hour. You got to go. You got to find the ball. You got to run. You got to hit them. And you got Taki and Phillips and Mack who all love to do that. So I think that's the strength of it. You got the right mindset, mentality, and physicality at the linebacking position.
All right, Gribble, what does this room need to improve on the most going into 2021?
I think the thing you want to see more is I just want to see more big plays. I think that you saw them making the plays they need to make. I just want to see more plays like the Taki pick six. I want to see those game changing plays from the linebackers, the third down, fourth down stops. I think you need more of that from this position group going forward.
And I'll add to that. I think you're right. Big plays, coverage. The better this group gets in coverage, the better this defense is going to be. And if we are able to kind of stop what I would at times was a big opening in the middle of the field, it would seem, for opponents, I think we're going to be very, very tough.
All right, this question is for you all, and I'm modifying it. I'm tweaking it just a little bit. 2021, is it bigger for Mack Wilson, Sione Taki? I'm going to throw in Jacob Phillips as well. I'm audibling here. Gribble, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I was going to go with Mack on this one originally, and I'll still go with him because I think that when I look at Taki and Phillips, I think that they hit a level last year where you expect them to keep growing and moving forward. I think 2020 was tough for Mack, and I think he's going to look to bounce back in 2021 and kind of prove that what he did as a rookie is what he can do overall. I think he wants to prove that he is a starting linebacker, an every down linebacker in this league. So I think that it's a big year for Mack going forward.
I agree. The way that it's written, who's it more important for, Mack or Taki? I think it is the most important for Mack. I think that in terms of contribution to our overall success, it's the most important year for Jacob Phillips because I think we need him to take on a role and a skill set that he alone, I believe, can provide in the room as it's currently constructed.
Gribble, I'll go with you on this one. Better chance the linebacker room is upgraded in free agency or through the draft? I guess I can ask both of you.
I guess since this is kind of a team that you're in, the Browns, I think, are officially after last year in win now mode. I think that the place where you're going to get help that's going to help you win now in 2021 is probably most likely going to be through free agency. And I'm not saying that means you're going to go big in free agency. I just think if you're going to get players that are going to help you and contribute right away this year, it's just got to be free agency because you're looking at a veteran player who you can plug in. Even if you use your first-round pick at number 26 on a linebacker, it's just tough as a rookie to really come in and make that kind of impact. And then if you don't use the pick at 26, then you're looking at guys that are maybe more developmental.
Zegura?
Yeah, I think free agent, certainly would be there. Now, we could be surprised. Zaven Collins, a lot of people compare to an Anthony Barr. And you know that the guys with familiarity with what happened in Minnesota would like to have an Anthony Barr skill set to this defense. But I do think it's more likely to come in free agency with a veteran with these guys. And I know we've heard the name Levante David and Gribbs. I'm curious to get your take. With the rumored price tag around Levante David, we all know he can play. Would it surprise you if the Browns went that rich at linebacker?
It would. It just wouldn't follow what you've seen so far. But again, there's been decisions that I think once you maybe have a read or beat on the Browns front office, then they can do something that might throw you for a loop. But I guess if you're following what we would think, it would surprise me just because I think he's a big name and a big price tag and guy who's been in the league for a while now.
All right, final one, and Zegura, I'll start with you on this one. Outside of our linebackers who are free agents, is there a linebacker either in free agency or in the draft that piques your interest? And I know you just mentioned one right off the bat.
Yeah, Zaven Collins, the more you read about him, it certainly sounds interesting. He's a guy who could rush the quarterback, do a lot of blitzing for you, but it's just long and a great athlete, can cover all of those things. So he's interesting. I think if you could get the kid out of Notre Dame, Owusu Koromora, that would be great. He kind of fits that safety linebacker hybrid that I think Joe Woods would love. in this defense. Micah Parsons, he's not going to be around. I mean, the truth is, I don't think that the kid from Notre Dame will be around either. Free agents, look, Levante David is the best of the bunch, but if you can find a guy that you think fits your scheme and can cover, that's for them to fine-tooth comb it and to go into guys like Dan Sagany to figure it out. Like, that's why I'm glad we have the people here that we do, and to find a situation that makes the most sense.
Gribble?
Yeah, just to build up what Nathan said, you look at the signing of B.J. Goodson last year. I mean, you knew what you were getting in him. You plugged him in, and I think he got the job done for you last year. And I think that was a credit to the front office to bring in someone that was able to kind of fill that role that you needed to fill. Nathan already stole my name, but I'm fascinated by Owusu Koromoa from Notre Dame, and I've been excited to see him projected a couple of times to the Browns. But I agree with Nathan; he probably isn't going to be there. But that kind of versatility, 6'1", 215-pound linebacker, I mean, that type of player with that skill set, that's the future of the NFL. I think teams are trying to scoop those players up, and if you could get him and a Grant Delpit on your defense, you've got all sorts of versatility and flexibility with what you want to do.
That's exactly right. Gribbs, it was a pleasure. We'll do it again a couple times this week as we finish up the defensive side of the ball with our position breakdowns. And as a reminder, all guests who appear on CBD appear via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better, and Gribbs just did that. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, my friend. All right, coming up next for the Browns, linebacking coach Jason Tarver, talking about the guys we just went through. Who better to hear from than the coach himself? It's our CBD exclusive coach interview next.
Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Very happy now to be joined by Browns linebacker Coach Tarver. And Coach, this was a season where you had a lot of variation in your room. And what I mean by that is you battled through some injuries, but you had a good mix of veterans like B.J. Goodson and Malcolm Smith who came in, and then young players like Mac Wilson and Sione Takitaki and Jacob Phillips. How, when you look back at this season, and it was a crazy one, we all know that, what did you think of the performance you got out of your guys?
Well, we talked about from the beginning that it's going to take all of us. We need everybody. And that came completely true because of whatever reasons. There's all kinds of things that happened within that season. But we're just extremely proud of how everybody jumped in, fought for each other, both in the linebacker room, but especially for the defense and for the team. And then everybody was able to master certain roles and get better within their roles. And over the course of the season, we showed improvement.
Certainly did. And let's talk about some of these veterans, because your room could look the same. It could look completely different next year. We don't know. A couple unrestricted free agents, B.J. Goodson and Malcolm Smith. But B.J. led your room in snaps. He led the Browns in tackles with 91, was a very sure tackler, a couple interceptions this season. This was kind of his biggest role in his career to date, and I think he handled it well. What did you see from B.J. Goodson? What did you like about what he gave you in 2020?
Well, our very first conversation was, hey, listen, you're going to get an opportunity, and we just need you to come in, learn the calls, and do your job one play at a time. And BJ did that, and very proud of him for that. And what he gave us was a guy with some experience on his third different team that understood, what losing looked like, what winning looked like, and he was able to stay the course and be the same guy every day.
And then Malcolm Smith comes in. We know he's a former Super Bowl MVP, but he comes in and on passing downs, I thought really played well, had a very nice season in coverage. And I don't know if you look at his history, if you expected to get that kind of performance out of him, but you did get it out of him this year.
Malcolm's amazing. We were able to, we had one season together where he got hurt in 2017 at the 49ers, one season where we were at the same organization. And Malcolm's really good and really experienced in some of the space games, some of the zones that we play, some of the pressures that we use. And he was in the right spot a lot, like you said, and got the guy on the ground, because linebacker's job is real simple: run, shed, and tackle the guy with the ball. That's what we do. And Malcolm, we were able to use in some of those roles, and he embraced that he wasn't going to be on the field all the time. And what was great about Malcolm is how much he helped the other guys, Sione, Jacob in particular. He was willing to share. He was honest. He helped make things easy. Player-to-player communication can really help guys learn quickly in the NFL.
Yeah, and I would say, how important is that to have a veteran come in and realize, look, not only, am I probably not the future here, but these guys are, and I want to help them. And you don't always see that. You hear sometimes that veterans are not so open to share their knowledge with the young guys, but to have guys like that, I'm sure really was helpful.
Well, yeah, everything's a competition. So you're competing, but you're also helping. And that's the true mark of a great teammate and a great person. And that's what Malcolm Smith is. And we're very thankful for everything that he did in that last year, everything he battled through as well.
All right, let's talk about some of these young guys now. And Sione Takitaki, career highs this year, one of the best run-defending linebackers in the NFL. Also, he had that big pick 6 against Philly when he was the team captain, the pick against Pittsburgh in the playoff win, that huge one. Huge strides. Where, in your opinion, where did he make the biggest progress from year one and what you saw on tape of him to year 2 coaching him?
All right, so let's start all the way through the offseason. Sione, struggled through injuries his first year and came out and just attacked the offseason. One of our goals for the offseason last year was to be in the best shape of your life. So that's the first thing Sione did. He got in great shape. He was working out in either Utah or California. He even put his old BYU helmet on for drills so he could get used to what it looked like looking out of the helmet. I love that. I hope he does it all the time. Send videos and stuff with his helmet on, and then now I told him wear the Browns helmet too, so you get used to that color. But no, it's great. So that was one. He got himself in great shape. 2, he really focused on how he learned. Everybody learns different, and coaching is teaching with adrenaline because a lot of things happen. and you got to be able to focus and go to the next play. And one of the things Sione definitely improved at was that. If something good happened, he was getting better at going to the next play. Something bad happened, go to the next play. Listen, we'll get the guy on the ground, and then we'll get him stopped. That's really where he improved. Early in the season, he had some learning experiences where he missed a few tackles, and later in the season, he really cleaned that up. He got better at his tracking, which is how we talk about approaching the man to tackle him. He got better at his targeting, where his eyes, where his wrap are. Those are just a few examples, but Sione stayed in his process and improved weekly, and you could see that. Now, in that run game, man, he loves contact, so he enjoys what we call same foot, same shoulder, power angle contact using his hands. So that's what he does well, and he's really fun to watch in there. But like I said, in the pass game, there's a great example. There's a wheel route against the Chiefs in the red zone, that first drive of the second half where we were able to stop them 3 and out, which was huge to keep us going and give us momentum in that football game. He covered a wheel route. He also covered a wheel route against the Jets, and those are not easy to do. So those were nice to see from Sione.
And just to follow up on Sione, he's kind of like a heat-seeking missile. And I think, you talked about early in the season, he had a tendency sometimes to overrun things, and that energy is great, but you need to harness it. And I think you really saw that as the season went on from him.
Yeah, he learned how to target where he's looking when he's approaching a tackle. He also learned how to keep his body in certain positions. We talk about bend in your ankles, your knees, and your hips, that's a good football position. Keeping your feet apart. He has all the power in his body, but he needed to learn how to control that. And really, when you play, it's control, burst. And then as you approach things, then you got to get back into control sometimes. And he really improved that. And I'm sure he's working on that right now. Hint, hint, Sione, listen to this and work on it. All right, no, he is.
I'm sure he is. And he's tough. I mean, he's tougher than I think anybody outside knows. I know he played through some things that may have been, hard for other people to play through. And I'm sure you loved having a guy like that in your room.
Oh, yeah, there's numerous things. He'd come off and just, you name it, put a finger back in or whatever it was. Sione's tough as nails.
He is. And so for him this year, second year in the same defense will be coming up in 2021. Are you looking for evolution in coverage? And if you get that, you got a guy who could be a 3-down stud for a long time.
Yeah, to continue his progression in the coverage aspect, to continue to fit correctly in the run game. He improved there too as the season went well. And then as a rusher, Sione can do some things attacking the quarterback. So hopefully as he masters more of the scheme, he can progress going towards the quarterback in certain situations for us as well.
Another guy who's getting a lot of talk about taking a leap in 2021 is Jacob Phillips. And I know he battled through a lot of injuries for you, but you saw him get the start week 17 at the mic when we needed a big performance, double-digit tackles in that game. And he just seems to have, at least, the outside eye, a size-speed combo that is unique in your room.
I'd add one more: size, length, speed, but I'd also add that he loves contact. Jacob likes to finish in the pile. He likes contact. He is trying to finish people off the right way, knock people back, and plays with energy. What's nice is for a rookie, he was able to learn the scheme, and he actually started at multiple positions in the games. He started at one of the positions against the Ravens in the first game, and then he started at the Mike position, of course, in that last game. He battled through injuries twice, so as he came back, that's a big thing for younger players that have never worked through an injury. Mac Wilson's the same way. That's the first time they're overcoming it. And you don't know, you feel like you're ready, but then sometimes you're not. And you got to set not only your body, but your mind to understand that. And both of those two work through that. So proud of both of those guys for that process of working through an injury.
Is Jacob somebody you're really excited to have a full off season with? Because, we talked about the length, the size, the speed. He looks like, kind of what you call the modern linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely excited about it. He learned how he learns football, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Again, we said it, everybody learns differently, and he learned that. The right amount of video to watch, how to take notes, how to stay in a process, how to work through things. He learned that. So now the number one offseason is in between year 1 and year 2. That's where you make a dent, because you know where you got to take your body. So for Jacob, he has that size, straight line speed. He's continued to work on his change of direction, his body lean, some of the same things we're working with Sione on, like we talked about. That's going to be really big for Jacob. And then just continuing to stay in the process, stay in the moment. He can really focus, and he got enough snaps to where enough things happen to him where he's going to remember it. And he does. He remembers almost everything.
Which is good. You can remember it, file it away, learn from it, and keep getting better. And then your other young guy, Mac Wilson. I think coming into the season, there were real big expectations. He suffers that injury, obviously, at the beginning of the year in training camp, which really kind of slowed his progress down. And maybe at times it was up and down, but I thought finished with a tremendous performance in the playoff game against Kansas City, was everywhere, flying around, hitting. He's got that. He looks like a linebacker, very fluid athlete. What did you see from Mac this year, and what do you hope to see from him going forward?
Well, number one, he loves contact, and we love that about him. He is absolutely trying to.
The theme in your room.
Yeah, but our three less experienced players really like running to, through, and beyond contact, which is how we say it, because we want to run our feet through contact, which Mac definitely improved in the last game. So Mac, again, he overcame a lot of things this year, and where he took his mind for that Kansas City week is where he needs to stay. And that was really cool that he was able to do that. We focused on just starting the down correctly, getting in a great football position, putting your eyes in the right spot. And Mac, when he does that, he can let his natural instincts and things take over. He was communicating. He was seeing where people were moving in formation. And that mindset, that's where we got to harness that. We got to put it's hard. It's easier said than done, but we're going to put that in a bottle and bring it with us. Like
absolutely.
Put that in the Gatorade or water, whatever we're drinking.
Channel that and keep it going from him. And so as you go into this offseason, you got some other guys. Obviously, Tate Davis contributed very nicely for you more on special teams. Elijah Lee. You've been working with Montrell Meander, the converted safety as well. So you've got some guys in the mix. But, for you as a coach, is this kind of a unique time when for sure, we talked about Taki and Jacob and Mac, these guys are back. But around that, there are some questions. So how does that kind of impact what you do in your off-season planning? And I'm sure you're very actively involved with Andrew Berry and those guys in terms of this is what we're looking for at the linebacker spot. And here's what I think about who we had and what's out there.
Yeah. First, the off-season process is we look through the free agents in the NFL and what can they do. And then our role as coaches is if we did have them, how would we use them and how do we help them get better? Because that's what number one thing a player wants from a coach is how do I get better, coach?
Yep.
So we look at them that way and then allow Kevin and Andrew and the front office and everybody else to make a decision on who we have. And then once we have them, then we're going to use them to the best of their ability. And that may mean some guys need more rest than others. Some guys play more when they're just trying to run it right at us. Some guys play more in the space game, like you saw how we use players in this past year.
Yep.
And as it gets built, then we'll figure out what they do best and how they learn. And that's the job of all of us to put it together. I was raised by Coach Bill Walsh, and his number one rule was know your personnel and use your personnel. And he'd remind us all the time. Okay, in many different ways, he'd remind us all the time. But that's how we view it, and we just work together as a team. Who can do what? Let's put them in those positions within our scheme. I mean, they all have to do certain things to be able to be brought into the different rooms. But that's what we're looking to do and get an improvement. We need the ball more. We got to get the ball back in our offense's hands.
Well, you guys certainly did that in the playoffs, especially that game against the Steelers. That had to be pretty special to be a part of for you and your guys, obviously playing a big role in that game and everything that happened there. That was a fun one, and I hope that your first year here in Cleveland, that was a pretty special one to be a part of.
Oh, heck yeah, we know that. That game was amazing. I mean, first of all, taking a car ride by myself to get there, and not practicing until late in the week and all the things. I mean, you heard it from Coach Kevin and everybody embracing the suck. Our guys didn't bat an eye. And then they took the field, and again, if you could bottle it all the time, it'd be awesome, but they just played, and it was fun to watch, and getting our hands up, and tips and overthrows, and getting those for the defense, getting the ball back. And then getting over there we would huddle and get ready to look at the plays and fix them, and the offense had already scored. It was awesome. But that was what we talk about and what we emphasize as an organization and team. And it was really the culmination of that. The team and people not caring about themselves, just caring about the team. and laying their hearts on the line for that.
How much easier is it going to be for you to do your job and for your players to do their jobs, knowing that, last year you guys didn't really have an off season. You're implementing a new offense and a new defense. It was a completely new organization. You were new to the team. Some of those veterans that came in new. That now you're going to have some semblance of continuity. Guys are going to know the calls. They're going to have not played a lot of the defense before. How helpful is that actually?
We'll have some. I mean, we're going to have some pretty good turnover, which one way or another on defense. But every year's a new year. We're going to attack it from step one. And because we have to make sure, number one, our identity of who we are and how we play is established. Our communication systems are established. And yeah, hopefully we do get an off season because we don't know what's coming yet. But
absolutely.
we're getting good at this adjusting stuff, so we'll just keep doing it.
Hey, you're a natural on Zoom, obviously. So I'll leave you with this because you just mentioned who we are, what our identity is. What do you want Browns fans when they see your linebacking room out?
1 minute.
Them to know that identity is? What should come right to their mind when they see it?
Well, it's like we said earlier. The job of a linebacker is to run, shed, and tackle the guy with the ball. So there's only two things they can do. They can run it and they can throw it. And now with this RPO system and all that, it's 2 plays in 1, right? But as soon as that ball is declared somewhere, we need to be running on the correct angle, shedding who's ever in our way, tackling the guy with the ball, ripping at the ball. And our number one goal is to stop the offense and get the ball back in the hands of our offense. And that's what we're looking to do. Play in and play out.
Love it. Coach, thank you so much for the time and best of luck here. Hopefully to get an off season, hopefully for you to get a little bit of a vacation there as the world seemingly starts to open up a little bit. And I know you're enjoying your time here in Cleveland, and we're certainly enjoying having you.
Yeah, my family.
10 seconds to break.
We're exploring everything. I mean, it's been great, and we got a lot more to see. So we're excited about it.
All right. That's Coach Tarver. We'll be back for more Cleveland Browns Daily right after this. Much more to come here as we wrap it up on Cleveland Browns Daily. Nathan Zegura, Jason Gibbs. If you missed earlier, Cynthia Freeland was great. I recommend checking out the podcast. Coach Tarver there, awesome look at his linebacker room. And again, that physicality, guys who love to tackle, love the physicality, the position, and some young guys with a lot of promise. Taki, Jacob Phillips, Mac Wilson, guys with the real potential to step up and be long-term solutions for the Browns at that position. Before we go, some news from around the league. As we talked about, veterans are going to be getting cut around the league, and today we saw one with the Las Vegas Raiders. Gabe Jackson has been informed he will be released. That will clear up about $9.35 million of cap space for the Raiders. No dead cap with that as well. A very good guard, signed a big contract there. Obviously, the Browns are not going to be in that market. No effect on us, but a good offensive lineman will hit the market here as we get into free agency. Coming up here on the rest of the week, we are going to continue our position breakdowns. We're going to look at our corners and our safeties. DB coach Jeff Howard will join us. Gibbe lining up all kinds of huge guests for the rest of the week, aren't you, Gibbe?
Dude, we're making it happen. A lot of reaction. Andrew Berry talks today at 3:30. Real quick, one thing you're hoping to hear from Andrew Berry today.
Something like that I can sink my teeth into. Something I can get excited about. Maybe an announcement.
30.
Maybe it's an announcement of, we have re-signed one of our free agents. Hollywood Higgins is back. Money Mitch is back. That's what I'd like to hear. Give me a nice little piece of news right here in the midst of this. That's what I'm looking for today. That's coming your way on the next level. It is next. Thanks for listening to Cleveland Browns Daily. Keep it tuned to ESPN Cleveland all day long.